In this video, you're gonna find out the full story behind Scarlet Witch's son, Wiccan, Billy's magical birth. Wiccan is most commonly known by his alter ego William Billy Kaplan, but that hasn't always been the case. Originally, William's last name was Maximoff, yes, as he shares the same surname as Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, and of course, it goes without saying that they're related. Wanda is William's mom. In fact, William has a twin named Thomas, who'd go on to be the superhero in his own right, the speedster aptly named, well, Speed. But if you thought that the Maximoff twins were conceived the old-fashioned way, prepare to get your mind blown. There's a whole convoluted story involving dark lords and magic that led to the original iteration of Wiccan. Without confusing you with too many details, all you need to know is that the Scarlet Witch was able to access powerful magic energies which allowed one of her wishes to be granted. And well, Wanda wished for a family, and presto changeo, William and Thomas were born. Eventually, it would be revealed that Mephisto, one of Marvel's literal lords of the underworld, was the one responsible for pretty much manifesting William and his twin. You see, Mephisto had a run-in with Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman's son, Franklin Richards. By the end of their confrontation, the evil entity took an L so hard that his whole essence got shattered. It was then revealed that a couple pieces of Mephisto's essence were responsible for bringing life to Thomas and William. So basically, Wiccan and Speed didn't even start out as superhumans. They were literal mystical constructs that Wanda created using Mephisto's essence. Along the way, Mephisto got his groove back and ended up reabsorbing his essence, resulting in William and Speed's apparent demise. Suffice it to say that Wanda Maximoff's dream of having a happy family ended right after that. Several real-world years and a retcon later, Marvel changed its mind and decided to bring back William and his twin brother. This time, it was revealed that Wanda's kids weren't born from Mephisto's essence. They were actually purely created within Wanda's ability to manipulate reality. According to Marvel, she just didn't know she had this ability at the time. In fact, Wanda would even find out that her sons were brought into existence when she tapped into a mystical energy source called the Life Force. In addition to that, Mephisto didn't reclaim them before, he basically just stole their souls. Everything surrounding Wiccan's birth seems a little convoluted at this point, right? Well, Marvel was just getting started, but to spare you the time and effort, all you should know is that the superhero named Wiccan that we know today was born when William Maximoff's soul sort of got reincarnated as a boy named William Kaplan. Billy's road to magic. Now, one of the most integral aspects of Billy Kaplan is that he's one of superhero comics' more prominent gay characters. When he was young, Billy was incessantly harassed at school because of this. He one day met Wanda Maximoff while hanging out in front of the Avengers mansion, and neither of them knew who each other really was at the time. Thinking that Billy was just another kid having a hard time, the Scarlet Witch gave him a classic Avengers pep talk, which Billy then took to heart. Not long after that, Billy learned to stand up to his school bully, but there was one hitch. He ended up nearly taking out the guy when his powers first manifested. He then attempted to seek Wanda's help in order to learn how to control his newfound abilities. He failed to do so because this happened around the time when Earth's mightiest heroes had just broken up. Now, Billy would also meet Teddy Altman, who would eventually be revealed to be the shape-shifting superhero Hulkling around this time, and the two would become a couple. Billy becomes Wiccan. Eventually came a day where the superhero Iron Lad met Billy, and you see, Iron Lad was out in the world trying to recruit superheroes to form a new Avengers team after the original one disbanded. In addition to that, Iron Lad was also trying to prevent a possible future where he would ultimately become Kang the Conqueror. So Billy heard Iron Lad's pitch and he was in. Both he and his boyfriend Teddy became full-fledged Avengers. Well, young Avengers to be more specific. During their early run as a team, Billy didn't even take on the mantle of Wiccan. Instead, he took cues from the lightning god Thor and started calling himself as Guardian. Now, Billy's powers initially manifested as a form of electrokinesis, which also helped why he chose to use Thor as the template for his early superhero identity. However, it wouldn't take long for him to reveal that he was actually a magic user who had way more tricks in the bag aside from electricity. Eventually, Billy would meet Vision, who'd then give him a clue about his true heritage, that he was related to one of the original Avengers. But by then, Billy still had no clue that it was Wanda. Not long after the revelation that Billy was a mystic, his fellow young Avengers Kate Bishop leadership and stature pretty much goaded him into doing a rebrand of his superhero identity, and given that he uses magic, well, the name Wiccan was finally born. Billy's true heritage. Billy and Teddy's relationship was a loving and romantic one. Both their families were very supportive and everything seemed to be going great. But the life of a superhero is always fraught with danger. Teddy's mom would eventually be taken out when a Skrull supervillain named Kalert attacked the two boys with the goal of kidnapping Hulkling. Not long after that, Teddy would fall into the hands of another alien race, the Kree. And when this happened, well, Billy and the Young Avengers had no other choice but to mobilize and rescue their kidnapped teammate. However, the fledgling superhero team realized they were in over their heads, so they decided to consult with the Vision, who then pretty much told them to get new hires into their team so they can roll with the big boys. This then prompted Billy and the rest of the Young Avengers to break out a boy named Tommy Shepard from a supermax prison for superpowered juvenile delinquents. Now, Tommy would eventually be revealed to be the reincarnation of Thomas Maximoff, which means that he's Billy's twin. Tommy then joined Wiccan and the Young Avengers to rescue Hulkling. This whole episode ended up with the teenage superheroes having to fend off both Kree and Skrull forces, but it all worked out. They were able to save Billy's boyfriend, and Tommy ended up joining the Young Avengers as the superhero Speed. Shortly after this adventure, both Wiccan and Speed would discover that they're Wanda Maximoff's original twin sons, who were reborn to a couple of different families. They then confirmed this when Vision checked the stored data from an older version of himself. Billy's Young Avengers stint. Time would pass and the grown-up superheroes of the Marvel Universe decided to have a rift between them, culminating in the first Civil War event. During this period, S.H.I.E.L.D. attempted to take the Young Avengers into custody. It wasn't until the intervention of Captain America and the Falcon, a couple of heroes against Tony Stark's superhuman registration initiative, that Billy and his team would be saved. Billy would magically transport his allies to Cap's secret base. Afterwards, he and the Young Avengers would be part of the anti-registration resistance led by the Star-Spangled Avenger. As part of this resistance, Billy and the Young Avengers would also meet another teenage superhero team, the Runaways. The Runaways initially thought that the Young Avengers were hostile, and they ended up in a classic superhero on superhero brawl. They eventually cleared things up, but both the Runaways and the Young Avengers were then attacked by a Kree superhero known as Novar. The altercation ended with Wiccan, Hulkling, and a couple of other superpowered kids getting captured and trapped within a pro-registration supermax prison. And they were dealt a bad hand here. The head of the prison, a villain aptly named the Warden, started experimenting on Hulkling's body. Eventually, a Skrull hero named Savin rescued Wiccan and the others. Wiccan even nearly took out the Warden after subjecting his boyfriend in those horrendous experiments, but Hulkling managed to calm him down and they just left the prison. Billy's role in the Civil War came to an abrupt halt when the pro-registration and the anti-registration heroes had an all-out battle with each other. Wiccan, along with the superhero cloak, served as the Resistance main mode of transport, so pro-registration heroes Spider-Man and Tony Stark took them out. By the end of the battle, Wiccan became a prisoner of their enemies yet again. He'd only be freed when Cap and his Resistance rescued him and the others captured superheroes late in the Civil War. The quest to find Wanda. After the events of Marvel's Civil War, Wiccan and his brother Speed then decided it was time to look for their mom, the Scarlet Witch. The twins scoured places like the mutant haven of Genosha and the European territory of Wundagore to do this. Eventually, Wiccan and Speed met another magic user named Master Pandemonium, who then informed them that he didn't have any idea where the Scarlet Witch was, but all he knew was that she got her mind wiped after initially witnessing the original Thomas and William Maximoff pop out of existence because of Mephisto. Along the way, Wiccan would help fend off a Skrull invasion along with the Young Avengers and even help Doctor Strange fight off the supervillain, the Hood. During the Children's Crusade storyline, Wiccan lost control of his abilities while fighting a group called the Sons of the Serpent. The grown-up superheroes then placed him under confinement right after this encounter. However, Teddy and his fellow Young Avengers helped him escape the OG Avengers' clutches so they can start searching for Wanda Maximoff again. In fact, even Magneto and Wanda's brother Quicksilver helped Wiccan and the Young Avengers during this mission. They all ended up arriving in Latveria, the country ruled by the supervillain Dr. Doom. Now, what Wiccan and the rest of his friends find there was an absolute shocker. First off, they discovered that Wanda Maximoff had lost her powers and her memories, but the real bombshell was when they found out that she was betrothed to Dr. Doom. And just for some context, Wanda has basically become public enemy number one at this point in the story, since she caused a universe-altering event with her powers when she lost her mind earlier. So most of the other superheroes of the world were actively hunting her. And hunt her they did, because it wasn't long after Wiccan's arrival in Latveria that the Avengers soon followed suit. A whole fight ensued between them in which Iron Lad ended up transporting Wiccan, the Young Avengers, and Scarlet Witch into the past. Wanda would then regain her abilities and memories during this time-displaced exploit, and she'd send everyone back to their original timeline. And from here, Wiccan and Speed would finally be able to put the matter to rest when the Scarlet Witch confirmed that they were the reincarnations of her original sons. So this only meant one thing: Wanda is their mother, no questions about it. But the Maximoff family wasn't entirely ready to ride off into the sunset just yet, because shortly after the heartwarming revelation, we find out that Scarlet Witch's powers returned when she tapped into the life force. Dr. Doom ended up absorbing Wanda's power and attempted to use it to create a world according to his image. A whole new battle between the Young Avengers and Doom broke out, which ended with Doom taking out Stature. And just so we don't veer away too much from Wiccan's story, suffice it to say that Stature's death played a large part in the Young Avengers' disillusionment. Wiccan ended up with a bad case of depression, but thankfully Hulkling was there to help him through it and even ended up proposing to Billy. Plus, the Young Avengers would remain in the rear view mirror, but Wiccan and his former teammates were eventually promoted to the OG Avengers roster shortly after that, so the road might have been full of bumps, but it did work out. The further adventures of Wiccan. Billy and Teddy would decide to hang up the capes and tights for a time, but this was going to be more of a short-lived hiatus than the actual retirement that they wanted. During their time off from fighting crime and other threats, Wiccan took it upon himself to bring Teddy's mother back to life. Well, this whole plan went a little haywire when he instead inadvertently summoned an extra-dimensional creature who called itself Mother. But even worse, this insidious threat managed to impersonate Teddy's real mom. It was then revealed that Loki orchestrated Mother's arrival. The thing is, Marvel's God of Mischief had this whole plan to bring Wiccan to his side, believing that the boy was meant to become a godlike entity. Loki ended up finessing his way into Billy and Teddy's lives. Not knowing about his true motives, the two young heroes decided to work with the God of Mischief. Eventually, Loki's plan went off the rails and Mother was able to take control of him, Wiccan, and Hulkling. But there is a bright side to this: the fact that the Young Avengers got back together when a few more teenage heroes came to Wiccan and Teddy's aid. Beset on all sides by enemies, Loki hoodwinked Wiccan into borrowing the boys' powers so that they could win the battle. But Loki ended up running away from the battle as soon as he got his hands on Wiccan's magic. Still, Loki might be a scumbag on any other day, but not this one. He eventually returned to the battle to aid Wiccan and his newly reformed Young Avengers, and in the end, they managed to defeat Mother and neutralize the threat for the time being. In addition to that, the Young Avengers decided to officially get back together and go on adventures again as a team. Loki would then opt to bring Wiccan under his wing in order to fully grasp the extent of his powers. In the interim, Wiccan and the Young Avengers would also add the superhero Prodigy to their ranks. They'd go on an adventure to save Speed, which saw Wiccan and the Young Avengers go on a multiverse hopping adventure that culminated in their arrival within Mother's home. This whole mess saw Hulkling and Prodigy trapped within Mother's dimension, which prompted Wiccan and the Young Avengers to use villainous alternate iterations of themselves to rescue their two friends. By the time this adventure was over, Hulkling and Wiccan's relationship started to hit a bit of a snag when Teddy started to wonder if his love for the magic user was genuine or if he was just being manipulated by Wiccan's magic. This fracture within their relationship kickstarted what would be Wiccan and the Young Avengers' ultimate confrontation with Mother. You see, that disciple of Mother named Leah coaxed Hulking into inadvertently bringing back Mother. Mother then attempted to summon the Young Avengers' evil versions from across the multiverse to wreak havoc on Earth 616. To stop this from happening, Wiccan tried to cast out Mother with his magic, but he immediately discovered that he was too weak to do so. To get around this, Loki used his abilities to age Wiccan's body a few years and turn him into a young adult. Loki believed that doing this would allow Wiccan's body to be strong enough to banish Mother from 616, but this ended up proving insufficient, so Loki had to adjust his game plan. Specifically, Loki planned on allowing Wiccan to transform into Demiurge temporarily. The rest of the Young Avengers were busy fighting off the evil versions while all this was happening. Eventually, Wiccan came face to face with Mother and he tried to activate his powers to finally cast her out. It didn't initially work, but Hulkling ended up giving Wiccan a super sweet confidence boost as they reconciled with each other. With some help from the power of love, Wiccan was able to then realize the utmost extent of his abilities and successfully take out Mother. A bit of time would pass and Wiccan would find himself becoming a full-time superhero again, along with Teddy. They joined the ranks of the New Avengers, led by Sunspot. One of Wiccan's first exploits with this new new team saw the young mage defeating a creature known as the Life Minus Entity with the help of Power Man and Songbird. After that, Wiccan would then find himself kidnapped by a group called the Knights of the Infinite after they accidentally mistook him for Hulkling. You see, the Knights of the Infinite were actually Skull Kree hybrids just like Hulkling, and they believed that he was their so-called chosen one. Everything was cleared up when Hulkling confronted the Knights and he passed their tests, even acquiring the sword Excelsior along the way, and of course freeing Wiccan on his way to becoming the leader of the Knights of the Infinite. Wiccan and Hulkling would then join the Knights to their home base called Castle Tarnilla, and their combined might faced off against the evil magic user Moradin. Wiccan's fellow New Avengers would join the fray when it would take all their might to finally put a stop to their enemy. When the dust settled, Billy decided to do another rebrand, dropping the Wiccan moniker and taking up the superhero name Demiurge. Unknown to him and anyone else at the time, however, Demiurge had managed to enter his mind before they defeated him. This shady little act kicked off a whole new string of events in which we saw a possible future where Moradin had completely taken out Demiurge and assumed control of his body. Moradin then went on a chaotic rampage that saw a few members of the OG Avengers eliminated. To stop this from happening, the Avengers from the future traveled back in time to the present to try and stop Moradin before he could gain more power. But they were a little bit late because Moradin still ended up taking control of Billy in the present. A whole altercation between the future Avengers and the new Avengers of the present then ensued. It only stopped when Hulkling entered Billy's mind and, like before, used the power of love to convince his partner to fight off Moradin and banish the evil mage from his subconscious. In the end, Billy won and the OG Avengers of the future found peace, given that Moradin was never around to wreak havoc in their timeline. Billy and Hulkling's time with Sunspot's team would come to an end when they, along with the superheroine Squirrel Girl, got banished. In the aftermath of their banishment, Sunspot gave Billy, Hulkling, and Squirrel Girl the rights to the new Avengers brand so they can use it to form their own crime-fighting team. The trio then faced off against the supervillain Plunderer, after which they were joined by OG Avengers Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, to cement this iteration of the new Avengers. The quartet would then go on a few adventures, such as aiding in the battle against the villain known as the Celestial Destructor, in which Billy joined forces with his mom and Doctor Strange to defeat it. Like we said, their separation from Sunspot's team was amicable, as they ended up assisting their former teammate from time to time. Namely, Billy and the new Avengers helped rescue Songbird from the clutches of S.H.I.E.L.D. and even helped Sunspot's team fight off the supervillain outfit called the New Revengers. Eventually, Billy, Hulkling, Squirrel Girl, and Clint Barton would disband their version of the New Avengers for a couple of hard-hitting reasons. For one, Clint was charged for murdering Bruce Banner during this time. On the other hand, Squirrel Girl decided to come back to Sunspot's team in order to keep him in check. But hey, Billy and Teddy got a sweet deal after all of this. Sunspot ended up gifting them an entire mansion for themselves, and the two decided to hang up the capes and tights once more to live quiet lives as private citizens. Billy goes back into action. Billy and Teddy would get pulled back in the wild world of superheroes when they crossed paths with Death's Head. During their encounter, Wiccan managed to subdue the robot with his magic, but it turned out that Wiccan was hiding another Death's Head robot that he took from the AIM lab in the past. This particular event opened up a can of worms that eventually saw Billy and Teddy reuniting with another Young Avengers alum, Kate Bishop. They ended up infiltrating the lab where the Death's Head robot was created, and as you'd expect, an epic fight happened between the two heroes and another group of robots called the Fearmongers. In the end, Billy, Hulkling, and Kate won, and they even managed to free the Fearmongers from the lab and allow them to lead normal lives. Not long after that, Wiccan would find himself becoming a part of the group called the Strike Force, in which he helped a race of aliens called the Viridae to find a new home on Deadpool's Monster Island. The Avengers would then try to draft Billy to become part of their Wetworks team after this, but he refused the offer. Starcross Lovers. Now, we can't overstate how important Teddy's relationship is to Billy's overall characterization in the Marvel Universe. In fact, one of the prime examples of this happened during the Empire storyline. In it, an alliance between the rivaling Kree and Skull races managed to convince Hulkling to pretty much serve as their chosen leader. This all stemmed from a prophecy that stated Hulkling was destined to be their unifier, given that he has both Skrull and Kree heritage. There was one problem. Doing so meant Teddy would have to end his relationship with Billy, but as these two boys have proved time and time again, there's no stopping the power of love. So Wiccan and Hulkling eloped and had a secret ceremony to tie the knot before Teddy commenced his role as the Kree-Skrull Alliance's head. Hulkling would eventually find himself kidnapped by his own grandmother, Arkle. Arkle then shapeshifted in the form of Teddy to use a super weapon called the Pyre in order to end an ongoing war between the Kree-Skrull Alliance and another alien species called the Kotati. With the help of the Human Torch and Captain Marvel, Wiccan realized something was off with his partner, which then prompted him to use his abilities to locate where the real Teddy is being kept. Wiccan rescued his husband shortly Shortly after that, Teddy ended up defeating his grandma while Earth's superheroes managed to put an end to the Kotati threat. With all that said and done, Billy and Teddy renewed their vows in a grand ceremony aboard the Kree-Skrull Alliance's ship, and believe us when we say that Wiccan became royalty after this. That's because marrying Hulkling granted him the title of Prince Consort and Court Wizard of the Kree-Skrull Alliance. After Wiccan and Hulkling would almost exclusively spend their time with the Kree-Skrull Alliance, the next time we see them, Billy and Teddy were having a nice honeymoon on the star beaches of Little Chandelar when Null sent a bunch of his symbiote dragons there as a part of his war against life. Wiccan and Hulkling's honeymoon was ruined, but they were able to rescue themselves and the other people on Little Chandelar when they escaped Null's attack. Sometime later, Billy and Teddy played a part in saving the world from the Dark Dimension when he teamed up with the Guardians of the Galaxy in defeating the Dark Lord Dormammu. The whole part of this chapter in Marvel's history saw Dormammu taking over Ego, the living planet, and unleashing his mindless army throughout the galaxy. In their effort to fight the Dark Lord, Wiccan allied with Sword and helped defend the ancient homeland of the Skrulls from the mindless army. Meanwhile, Hulkling and the Guardians of the Galaxy went to the Kree capital called Homeworld 2 to fight off Dormammu's forces there, and it ultimately ended with our heroes saving the universe like they always do.